Three couples got married and spent their honeymoons at the same hotel, where they were all attended to by Jeff the bellboy. The first man married a nurse. Jeff showed them to their room, all the while thinking to himself, "Lucky guy, nurses are known to be hot to trot." The second man married a telephone operator. Jeff showed them to their room while thinking to himself, "Wow, he's one lucky dude. Telephone operators have such sexy voices, and once you pop that top button, va-voom." The third man married a school teacher. Jeff showed them to their room and thought to himself, "Poor sap, she may be pretty, but teachers are way too frigid." At 5:30 the following morning, Jeff reported to work. He expected the teacher's husband to call for breakfast any minute, but was sure the other two wouldn't call until much later in the day. The phone rang at 6 a.m., and it was the nurse's husband wanting breakfast. Jeff took breakfast up to the room, and when the husband opened the door, Jeff stepped back in shock. The man's pajamas were still pressed and his hair nicely combed. "Sir, what happened?" asked Jeff. "You married a nurse." "Son, don't ever marry a nurse," the man sourly replied. "All I heard last night was her nagging voice saying, 'You're not sanitary, you're not sanitary.'" The phone rang again at 6:30 a.m., and this time it was the telephone operator's husband calling for breakfast. Jeff took it to the room as quickly as possible. When the man opened the door, Jeff stepped back in shock. The man's hair was neatly combed and his pajamas nicely pressed. "What happened?" Jeff asked with surprise. "Telephone operators are supposed to be as sexy as their voices." "Son, don't ever marry a telephone operator," the man groaned. "All I heard last night was her nasal voice saying, 'Your 3 minutes are up, your 3 minutes are up.'" Jeff returned to his desk, sure that the teacher's husband would be calling at any moment. Finally, at 4 p.m., the teacher's husband called for breakfast. Jeff couldn't believe it, but quickly took the breakfast to the couple's room. When the man opened the door, Jeff stepped back in shock. The man was wearing only a pair of boxers. His hair was a mess, and there were scratches all over his chest, arms, and legs. "My goodness, sir, what happened to you?" Jeff asked, fearing the worst. "Did you have a fight?" The man, grinning from ear to ear, happily replied, "No, son, when you marry, be sure it's to a school teacher. All I heard last night was her sexy, smooth voice saying,
'We're going to do this over and over and over again until we get it right.'"
A man went into a local tavern and took a seat at the bar next to a female patron. He turned to her and said, "This is a special day. I'm celebrating." "What a coincidence," said the woman. "I'm celebrating too." She clinked glasses with him and said, "What are you celebrating?" "I'm a chicken farmer," he replied. "For months all my hens were infertile, but today they're finally fertile." "What a coincidence," the woman said. "My husband and I have been trying to have a child. Today, my gynecologist told me I'm pregnant." "How did your chickens become fertile?" she asked. "I switched cocks," he replied. "What a coincidence," she said. "Me too." A scientist went to a brain store to get some brains to complete a study. He sees a sign remarking on the quality of professional brain offered at this particular brain store. He begins to ask questions about the cost of these brains. "How much does it cost for engineer brain?" the scientist asks. $3 an ounce. "How much does it cost for programmer brain?" the scientist asks. $4 an ounce. "How much for politician brain?" the scientist asks. $1,000 an ounce. "Why is politician brain so much more?" the scientist asks. "Do you know how many politicians we had to use to get 1 ounce of brain?" A farmer's egg production began to drop, so he went into town and bought a new, younger and more virile cockerel to replace his elderly one. The new cockerel strutted up to the old one and said gleefully, "You're for the pot, old-timer, and all this feathered pussy belongs to me now." The old cockerel put on a sad face and said to the young one, "Oh, really? Tell you what, I'll race you to the garden gate and back. If you win, you keep it all. If I win, I keep it all. But you have to give me a slight head start for being old, okay? The young confident cockerel looks at the old guy and laughs. Yeah, sure. Okay, Pops, your history. They start off at full pelt, with the old cockerel a yard in front, racing to the gate. Suddenly there's a loud boom. This is a farmer with a gun in his hands, shooting at a young cockerel. God damn it! That's the third gay cockerel I've bought this month. 3 ladies all have separate husbands named Leroy. One evening, while sharing a few drinks at the bar, one of the ladies suggests, "Let's name our Leroys after a soda pop, because I'm tired of getting my Leroy mixed up with your Leroy, and her Leroy mixed up with your Leroy." The other 2 ladies agree. The first lady speaks out, "Okay then, I'm going to name my Leroy 7-Up because he has 7 inches and it's always up." The 3 ladies hoot and holler and slap each other, high fives. Then the second lady says, "I'm going to name my Leroy Mountain Dew because he can mount and do me any day of the week." Again, the 3 ladies hoot and holler and slap each other, more high fives. The third lady then says, "You know, those 2 Leroys were good, but I'm going to name my Leroy Jack Daniels." The other 2 ladies shout in unison, "Jack Daniels? That's not a soda pop. That's a hard liquor." The third lady bursts out, "That's my Leroy." Miss B was in her 80s and much admired for her sweetness and kindness to all. The pastor came to call on her one afternoon early in spring, and she welcomed him into her Victorian parlor. She invited him to have a seat while she prepared a little tea. As he sat facing her old pump organ, the young priest noticed a cut glass bowl sitting on top of the organ filled with water. In the water floated, of all things, a condom. Imagine his shock and surprise. Imagine his curiosity. Surely Miss B had flipped or something, but he certainly couldn't mention the strange sight in her parlor. When she returned with tea and cookies, they began to chat. The pastor tried to stifle his curiosity about the bowl of water and its strange floater, but soon it got the better of him, and he could resist no longer. "Miss B," he said, pointing to the bowl, "I wonder if you would tell me about this." "Oh yes," she replied. "Isn't that wonderful? I was walking downtown last fall, and I found this little package. It said to put it on your organ and keep it wet, and it would prevent disease. And you know, I think it's working. I haven't had a cold all winter." My friends, if you want to watch other funny jokes, subscribe to the channel.